Hi John, Kathy and the Vinnie's team. I hope you are all well. It's been so long since I've seen you. Things have improved in my life. I've put on lots of weight. I was under 4 stone and now I'm well over 10.5 stone. I've learned to budget, but I'm not great at it. But it gets me from fortnight to fortnight. Every Friday, I cook a healthy lunch for the parent group at Remiac House. The lunch is for 20 to 30 people, plus 6 to 12 children. I am also a public speaker for Mind Australia. The group is called Ambassadors of Hope. We give talks to groups such as the police, drugs and alcohol counsellor, and schools. I'm still not doing great around the house, but it has improved somewhat. Somehow there was a glitch in my therapy and the chaos in the house is stuck. My therapist had to resign, so it's a tough problem. I'll just have to keep working at it. I'm also planning to write a book, as many people have suggested it. I've done some fact gathering and I'll see how it goes. Hopefully someone will publish it. There's not much more I can tell you, except I'm still trying. Yours, Sharon Sheppard. When I first got to Drouin, as John knows, I arrived with nothing. I had very little clothing, no bed, no bedding, no kitchen table. I remember one late night sneaking behind Coles and borrowing 2 milk crates so I had somewhere to sit. And I was struggling. I didn't know or understand why I was struggling, but I was struggling terribly. And John came along and the team from Vinnie's began supporting me, and it was just a godsend to me, really was. And I didn't realise that I was a very unwell person at that time. I didn't realise that I had quite a difficult mental illness to deal with. And I didn't understand why I drank the way I did, which over the years got quite heavy. And I also had some other drug issues as well. And I didn't understand that I was self-medicating. And I went along to a therapist and finally got diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, along with things like depression and anxiety and panic and post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was a very big shock to me, a huge shock to me as a matter of fact, and my world began to crumble. And the only stable thing was John and Kathy and the team dropping in to see me. And I couldn't manage anything. I couldn't manage a shower, I couldn't manage to brush my hair. I don't think I always strung a sentence together very well. But they kept coming back. They kept coming back even in my worst states, and they were happy to see me. Not just happy to see me, but they treated me like a human being. Excuse me, I always get emotional. And I didn't really feel like one anymore. Thank you, John. And that gave me a little bit of hope. And I felt cared for, that someone in this world actually cared, whether I survive or not. And over the next few years, I underwent some pretty heavy-duty trauma therapy. And that was extremely difficult. There were times when I couldn't go to the grocers. There were times when I couldn't shop. And there were times when my budgeting skills were so lost that I couldn't work out what happened to my money from my pension. And of course, I wouldn't have a skerrick of food in the house before I rang John. And who insisted that I ring him anyway, even if I thought I might be able to get through, which was what I usually did. And often I laughed when you said usually on a Friday, because I was worried that I wouldn't make it through the weekend. And over these years, I did go quite low in weight. I think it was 32 kilos. And I remember my first attempt at giving up drinking when I dropped so low in weight. And John and Kathy were coming, and I always got a hug. I always got a smile, and I always got encouragement to just keep going. And there weren't too many other callers by this stage, I must say. The house was a real disaster zone, and like nothing I've ever experienced before. And I was in quite a state. At one point, there was a couple of years there where I could not get off the couch. And I found myself sleeping in my clothing on the couch. I found myself not being able to feed myself or even get up to cook. It was really a struggle to really do anything. And then someone gave me a little dog. And I thought, I don't need this right now. The poor dog. But someone was going to shoot the dog, and I didn't have the heart to say no. Well, the dog's not a little dog. The dog's this big now. So that was an added burden, but a blessing in disguise, because that dog needed to go outside, and that dog needed to be fed, and I needed to check his water. And so that forced me off the couch, and I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't have got up at all if it wasn't for the dog and John knocking on the door. So my therapy continued for quite a while, and I started to understand a few things. John and Kathy reminded me the whole time that there were good people in the world. And I started to understand a little bit about why I was unwell and about why I was drinking. And having good examples that called in, again, was another blessing. Because I thought after the door had closed again, I thought, what nice people. They don't need to drink. They're always happy, and they're doing good things for other people. And they care about me. They care what happens. And nobody else did. So as I began to recover, John and Kathy just kept coming back and coming back. And there were days when it really surprised me that they would walk in the door. It was that bad. And but they never looked down on me. They never ever judged me. They just supported me, and they just cared. And I had to try and give up drinking. And I remember crying because I wasn't sure if I could. By this stage, I was medicating myself with alcohol. And because I was so unwell mentally, I didn't think to call a support group. I didn't think to even mention it to the doctor. And I did manage for quite some time to give up alcohol. But I wasn't going and being with people and getting support. Didn't even understand the concept. I was so unwell. And of course, the doctor saying that she was medically going to intervene with my weight scared me. So like any mentally unwell person, I thought it was a genius idea if I just had a glass of wine with my dinner to help get my appetite back. The worst possible thing I could have done for myself. So I spent another 12 months drinking, and that was appalling for me. Absolutely appalling. And somewhere in amongst that, I heard that there were 12-step programs. And I can remember very clearly ringing someone up, and the thought was in the back of my head, you're comfortable now with John and Kathy to ring them up and ask them for help. So just pretend that that's what you're doing today. And I rang this person up and asked them where I could get help. And I can remember quite vividly because he said, oh, you may not like it. It's the next meeting's in your town. And I said, do you know what? I said, everyone here has seen what's happened to me. It really won't hurt anyone to see me trying to get better and to change things. And John will tell you I live in quite a tough little street. There's a lot of people that are unwell and have drug and alcohol problems and mental health problems in the street that I live in. So it won't hurt them one little bit to see someone trying to make a change. So off I went to this little meeting, and that too has helped support me. And I'm really proud to say that I'm at the 3 year and 4 months mark on not having a drink, which is indeed not a small miracle for me. Thank you. And I thought I was doing really, really well, and I thought that was as far as that would take me. Yes, I can help at Ramiak House to do the lunches, and yes, I can do a little bit of public speaking here and there, but I thought that was the end. I was terribly wrong yet again in my life. It wasn't the end at all. As I began to get better and better, I began to get better at putting food in my own cupboards. I've begun to take a lot more care in my grooming. I actually brush my hair every day. I'm so shocked. And I began to look around me at the rest of the world too. What else can I do to help? I can't go back to work. No one will have me yet, but I can do little things to help other people. So now I help people with peer work, with their mental health issues, and also with drug and alcohol issues. And quite often I find that I can help with the combination of the two. And I think lived experience is an added bonus there, because I really know what's happening and can help in some quite significant ways. So I'm really excited about doing that work. I don't get paid very often. Sometimes I get a little bit of petrol money, which is really exciting for me, but that's okay, because that's not what I'm doing it for, because someone is in a position, maybe not as far gone as I was, but someone's in a difficult position, and John and Kathy and the team taught me it's about people supporting each other, and that's what truly works. So right now, things are changing again. And who'd have thought that I would be doing anything at all? I have a meeting next month with an organisation that is looking to back that book I wanted to write. I know. And that house that was complete chaos, the first workman comes tomorrow. So there will be carpenters and painters and roofers and lawn mowing people and fresh walls. So I feel like I'm starting yet another chapter in my life, and it's all to St Vinny's calling in to support me, and they gave me a lot more than food. They gave me hope for the future, and they showed me that people cared. And the amazing thing is, like, even in the condition I was in, I still got a hug. A simple hug meant so much to me, and it's taken me so far, so quickly in a couple of years. Sorry for being so emotional, but I can remember my neighbour who has a key to my house. And normally she knocks, but this day she walked in the door, and I was coming back from the bathroom, and we gave each other a fright. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I thought you were dead this time." I hadn't seen any movement for 4 days, not a blind, not a sound. I really honestly thought I would find you on the couch. And today I even have done things like get my licence back. I've got a little car. I only have 4 more little payments to make in that car. At least is paid for. And I've just got to get it into my name and registered. But that's huge for me. I lost my licence years ago. And even when I went back to court and said to the judge I'd like my licence, he just looked at me and said, well, you've stopped drinking, what's your backup plan? And I looked at him and I said, backup plan? What do you mean? And he said, well, what else do you do? And I said, I just pray I never have another drink. And he looked at me and he said, okay, then I'll give it back to you. And I waited a little while before I got my licence back. I wanted to be sure that all of the people on the road were safe with me on it too. It had been a long time since I'd driven. And my first trip was actually to Wonthaggi in the work car as a volunteer, and I was petrified, absolutely petrified. I think I was the slowest driver on the road, and I think everyone was like really annoyed with me that day. But now I zip around in my little red car, and I can do more things for more people. And none of this would have ever happened if it wasn't for St. Vinny's. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for St. Vinny's. And I'm just very, very grateful, not only to have had the support, but to have made such a wonderful friends. And I'll keep trying to live up to what's been modelled to me. So thank you very, very much for that. And thank you for listening today. It's very difficult when you've been through so much to actually stand up and tell people about it. And when you get to a place where life is turning around and changing, it's very hard to leave people behind in those positions. And so I'm grateful that I've been made well enough, both physically and mentally, to be able to help those people so much. And there's a lady that I'm working with now in my town who has, and she won't mind me mentioning this, but she has bipolar. And every time she goes into mania, she picks up a drink. And it's been devastating to her and her family. And very slowly, we are getting there. And before that, she would see a doctor for 15 minutes that couldn't actually work out what was happening with her. But we've worked out what was happening. We've got the right doctors on board. We've got her to see a psychologist. And we're working, so it's getting better each time that she has a lapse. We're down to a day or two now. So, and hopefully within the next couple of months, I'll keep praying on this one, but hopefully in the next couple of months, there won't be any more lapses. And that's the sort of work that I do today. And I'm just really blessed to be able to do that, because really there were so many times I couldn't string a sentence together. There were so many times I couldn't get in the shower, and there were so many times I couldn't feed myself. I mean, we had a chuckle about my budgeting. It was so far from budgeting. It was, oh, it's payday. Oh, what happened? Every time, every fortnight without fail. And now I know what I need to do each fortnight. I even have a funeral plan, so no one has to worry. Everything's changed, and changed for the better. And it's all because of you guys. Thank you so much. Thanks. Before I knew John and Kathy, I felt humiliated. I felt mortified that anyone would see me in that state, and I felt that they certainly wouldn't want to come back a second time. And I was so relieved to meet John and Kathy and the team, so very, very relieved, because there was no judgment on me. And they are such warm-hearted people that I knew that I was safe in their hands, that my privacy was respected, and that my condition and my state of being was not being disrespected. They cared for me as one human being to another. So it was very difficult for me to allow anyone in to see that, but it had to be the right people. So St. Vinny's were literally a godsend, because they really cared about what happened to me, and there was no judgment on me. They would have come in and behaved the same way if I lived in a mansion that was immaculate and all the rest of it. They would have been exactly the same as they came into my home. So while it was difficult for me, they very soon put me at my ease, and that made a lot of difference to me. Not just about letting someone in, but about having hope for the future. Sometimes it's the individual that's unwell, that's in the hole, and sometimes you've got to remember that it's not you in the hole. But by continuing to coming back, I know I've said that, but even if they don't recognise that on a conscious level, they will on a subconscious level, deep in their soul. And quite often, that is enough for that person. They might not be able to do anything much yet, but sometimes it will take them time to get to a better place before they can start moving forward. So really, having faith is the real key there. And some people, you can't help move forward, but you can help them at least not be how I almost was, and that was passing away in my own house. So maybe people can't do great things, but just sustaining that life is huge, but have faith. Someone told me to, and I can't remember who, but someone told me to ring them up. And I think it took me quite a while to make that phone call, because I was embarrassed. And especially when I became quite ill mentally, I was mortified to make contact again, because I felt ashamed, absolutely ashamed. But I think it might have been my social worker or my therapist that said, just ring them up. You've met them before and you've told me that they're lovely people. Just ring them up. And, you know, that was quite difficult, but I'm really glad I did. I've got friends for life now. Interesting, I'm a city girl, and things became too much for me in the city. I had an ex-husband who was a motorcycle rider and sold Harley-Davidson parts and bikes and British bikes. And this is going to sound funny, but the reason I came to a little town is because I thought no one will run into me here, and I can lick my wounds in some peace and privacy, and maybe one day be part of a community. And that was probably the main motivation. And arriving in Drouin was a little bit of culture shock, because I had an Aboriginal family across the road. I had one on the corner and then one every other house on the way up. And I had a family of drinkers here, and I think there was one elderly couple next door to me that were smart enough to keep to themselves. And there were alcohol fuel fights in my street. Neighbours arguing, Aboriginal families arguing with each other. There was incidences where I saw people getting into cars driving that couldn't walk to the car. There was domestic violence, and I can remember my first couple of months actually sleeping with a knife near my bed because I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't have a dog yet. And and I wasn't scared unless I was asleep. And then I thought, well, someone can just walk in here and I'll be sound asleep and I won't know. So I was really quite scared, and yeah, it was very different because I had a man in my life, my husband, and I felt quite safe, even though I was suffering with domestic violence issues there, and but I felt quite safe that no one else was going to attempt to hit me or hurt me. But a single female of unknown origins in a little town like that, I thought, oh, I'm in trouble here. And I can remember when the pup was quite young, waking up, and there was an Aboriginal man standing over my bed, and the dog was standing over the top of me, barking. He didn't hurt the man, but he literally stood over the top of me and protected me, and that was about 6 months after I moved in. And if I had have not had the dog, I don't know exactly what would have happened. His intentions were not necessarily good. So it was a very different neighbourhood. So there were some city issues because my little neighbourhood is a housing commission. And the reason I picked that particular place or agreed to move into it was because there was only about a block of housing commission places, a really rough block, but I thought it was a small area. It couldn't be as bad as, say, Dandenong or Doveton. I was hoping. That's a really good question. Do you know, at the time, I wasn't well enough to really do with more help on any level. I think John and Kathy and the team, I think they really hit the nail on the head by just being consistent, reminding me to ring them, because I haven't lost a lot of memory capability during that time that I was ill, and they'd remind me, just ring us. Even if you think you don't need anything, because I would push things along till there was nothing. Oh, there's 4 slices of bread and there's that much milk, and I've got a tin of stuff in the fridge, and that's it, you know. And even if you haven't run out yet to call us. And I think that they instinctively knew how much they could do and how much they couldn't. So I think I wouldn't have been well enough at that point to receive any extra help, especially with my drinking to self-medicate. I think sometimes you need to be a little clearer before you can even receive any more help than I got, because I just wasn't well enough to do any good with that help. So I couldn't for the life of me think of anything that John or Kathy or the guys could have possibly have done better. That human warmth that they showed me, that they cared, not just to hear and we're out of here. They really cared. They stopped for a few minutes and talked to me. And that hug. Kathy always gave me a hug. And I think that was the only person at that time in my life that gave me a hug. So it's those little things that just really go a long way. So, no, I couldn't even imagine anything that St. Vinny's could have done better at all. No. I needed to get well and find a way to do this, and I needed a way to maintain that. And if I had have been carried along, the minute that hand was away from underneath me, I would have fallen again. And I wouldn't have truly got well. I would have become dependent. And that's not healthy for anyone. But where I am now is in a healthier place, and yes, I can help other people, but it's because I got helped in the manner I did. It was supportive and it was caring. It wasn't fixing my life for me or anything like that, but it helped me to just stay alive, to know that people cared, so I could get on with rebuilding my life and myself. So that made a huge difference.